Hello, everybody, and welcome into our Class 5A Championship Preview. I'm your host, Michael Knight, the director of OKPreps.com, and it is Championship Week, at least for some of the larger schools. 2A and A and even Class B are still in the semifinal round, but for the majority of schools across Oklahoma, we are talking about the final two. Back in the beginning of the season, back in August, 32 teams began their journey towards a potential state championship. Fast forward to December, and only two stand: Bishop McGuinness and Carl Albert. Two teams that are district rivals and two teams that are very familiar with one another. We'll talk more about that as we continue here in our championship preview. But as always, we want to remind you before we kick things off to subscribe if you haven't done so already to our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com/OKPreps and you'll get all of our video content from championship previews to championship highlights. You'll get them before anybody else. You get that even before we publish it to OKPreps.com. Also, for those listening to this championship preview, we appreciate that. If you're more of a podcast person and you're looking for that, we have you covered as well, as all of our championship previews are available via podcast. Just go to search OKPreps on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, and you'll get all of our podcast content, championship previews, and championship recaps throughout the next 2 weeks or so as we wrap up the 2019 playoffs here in the state of Oklahoma. And as always, we want to tell you about our social media. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at OKPrepsTV, and also like us on Facebook. And as always, you can visit OKPreps.com for all the latest in high school sports across the state of Oklahoma. All right, now that's out of the way, let's talk about these two teams, these two programs that, like I mentioned at the top, very familiar with one another as we look ahead to the Class 5A state championship game. Bishop McGuinness coming in ranked number 3, 11-2 on the season. Carl Albert coming in ranked number 1, 12-1 on the season. They come into this as the 3-time defending state champions. Let's take a look at how both teams got here, and let's start with the 3-time champion Carl Albert Titans. It was a good season for Carl Albert once again as they came into 2019 with a lengthy winning streak. In fact, they had won 36 consecutive games coming into the 2019 season with another undefeated record. They would have, with another undefeated season this year, they would have won 50 consecutive games, and they would have broken Wagner's state record for longest winning streak in state history. We'll talk a little bit more about that, about why it didn't happen there. As you see, the road to Wantland for Carl Albert, they opened up the season against two of their district rivals, literal district there in Midwest City. They opened up against Midwest City in September, and they would shut out the Bombers 31-0. Then they would host Del City on a special night where they renamed the stadium after longtime head coach Gary Rose. They would win that one 49-19 in impressive fashion. They would follow that up by going on the road and beating up on Shawnee, followed by hosting Guyman and winning that one in a shutout. And then came the first Friday in October when shockwaves were sent through the state of Oklahoma in Class 5A as Piedmont would stun the Titans, winning 10-6 and ending Carl Albert's winning streak. It ended with 40 consecutive games. They're like one of only 5 programs in state history to have won 40 or more consecutive games, and Piedmont was able to get it done, beating the Titans 10-6 back in the first Friday in October. And that immediately asked the question, is 5A more wide open than we thought? Well, not quite, as Carl Albert would rattle off 8 consecutive victories since then, including 4 out of 5 shutouts to wrap up the regular season. They would shut out Northwest Classen and Guthrie. They would beat Woodward 49-14, which, by the way, it should be noted, there was snow on the ground there in Woodward in late October. That was a snow game, which it seems crazy to think. But, yeah, 49-14 in the snow. The Titans get it done. And then 2 more shutouts, 62-zip over Lawton Eisenhower. And then in the season finale, with the district championship on the line, they would shut out rival Bishop McGuinness 40-0. It should be mentioned, and we're going to talk a lot about it here in this preview. star running back Dominic Richardson for Bishop McGuinness did not play in that Week 10 matchup against Carl Albert. They would open up the playoffs against Duncan, win it easily 48-7. They would follow that up with a quarterfinal victory over McAllister, winning that one 38-7. And then came the rematch against Piedmont. And obviously, Carl Albert very fired up for that one, getting another shot at the team that ended their winning streak back in October. They would face Piedmont with a trip to the state championship on the line, and Carl Albert would pitch a shutout, winning that one 24-0, and punch their ticket to the state championship game. It is their 4th consecutive trip to the title game. They've won the last 3 5A state championships. This will be their 16th championship game in school history. And coming into Saturday's game with Bishop McGuinness, they are 14-1 all-time in championship games. Their only loss coming back, I believe, in 2008, 2007, somewhere around there, the late 2000s, to Booker T. Washington in a championship game. Carl Albert, otherwise, unbeatable when it comes to playing for a gold ball in their school history. And they look to become just the 4th school in Oklahoma history to win 15 state championships. The other 3 of the biggest names in high school football history in Oklahoma, Ada, who has 19, and then you have Jinx and Clinton, who both have 16 gold balls between them, or among them. Carl Albert looking to win their 15th on Saturday. Again, their 16th state championship in school history, and it should also be noted, with the win over Piedmont in the semifinals, they improved their semifinal record to 16-0 all-time in the semifinal round. Pretty remarkable what Carl Albert is able to do when they're playing, in semifinal games or championships. You take a look at those records, a combined 30-1 in semifinal or championship games. They simply don't lose when the stakes are highest. The Titans don't. So very impressive program, obviously. But they are facing a team that's very familiar with them and looking to continue to improve as they have over the course of this season. Bishop McGuinness coming in, and they're not going to be afraid of Carl Albert as they look to dethrone the 3-time champion Titans. Let's take a look at how the Irish got to Wantland Stadium on Saturday afternoon to face off with Carl Albert for the 5H state championship. Bishop McGuinness would open up the season against a familiar face between the two of them. Del City played both McGuinness and Carl Albert this year. Bishop McGuinness would fall to Del City on the road 20-17 to kick off their season. And as you'll hear from Bishop McGuinness head coach Bryan Pierce, that was kind of a wake-up call for an Irish team early on in the season. They would wake up and respond immediately the following week against their rival Bishop Kelly. They would win that one 41-14, followed up by blowout wins over Enid, Northwest Classen, Woodward, and Guyman, as well as Lawton Eisenhower. And then came a showdown with Piedmont back on October 25th. And now, if you remember, obviously Piedmont beating Carl Albert earlier in October, that set this matchup up for, if you're Piedmont, you have an opportunity to win the district championship if you're able to knock off both Carl Albert and Bishop McGuinness. And so McGuinness would go to Piedmont and they would make a statement, and that statement was, we are right in the thick of things in Class 5A. They would beat Piedmont 29-7. They would follow that up with a 33-7 win over Guthrie before going to Carl Albert in Week 10. And we mentioned things just not working out well for the Irish there, losing that one 40-0. They would open up the playoffs against Ardmore in the first round. They would win easily 46-14. Then came a showdown with Edison in the quarterfinals, a matchup between two of the best running backs in the state, Dominic Richardson of Bishop McGuinness, Savion Morrison of Edison. Morrison would get come up limp with a hamstring injury, I believe. It was a leg injury in the first half that sidelined Morrison for the rest of the game. McGuinness able to get a very close win in one of the more entertaining ball games of the 5A playoffs this year, winning it 42-27. to 41, and that would set up a rematch with their rival Bishop Kelly in the semifinals, the team that eliminated them in the quarterfinal round a year ago, and the Irish would eliminate the Comets this time around, winning that one 48-22. That sends Bishop McGuinness to their 6th state championship game in school history. It'll be the 3rd time the Irish are playing for the gold ball in the last 4 years. Coincidentally, that's the team that they've played all 3 times. Carl Albert, as the Titans come in as the 3-time champs. Bishop McGuinness is 2-3 all-time in state championship games. Those 2 titles coming in back-to-back years, back in 2006 and 2007. They're looking for their first ever state championship as a member of Class 5A. They've been right there in the thick of things. Obviously, in the last 5 seasons, they're looking to kind of forget about those silver trophies that they took home a few years ago and replace it with a gold one this year as they face a Carl Albert team that has beaten them, just off the top of my head, probably, 5 times in a row since Carl Albert lost, 6 times in a row since Carl Albert lost to McGuinness in the 2016 regular season. They would bounce back to win the championship that year and then rattle off 3 consecutive state titles, and they're looking for number 4 this year. Some storylines to follow as we take a look at this matchup and we break it down as far as these 2 teams. Obviously, they're 2 of the best in Class 5A. I don't need to, we talked about the resume for Carl Albert, why they are one of the best teams, not only in 5A, but in Oklahoma. You know why they're here. You know why McGuinness is here. They've been one of the best teams over the last 5 years. Some storylines to follow as you dive into this matchup. You break down this matchup. And the first one is very simple because we've already seen these 2 teams on a football field this year. And honestly, it wasn't too long ago. It was just a month ago, early November, they faced off in Week 10 with a district championship on the line. And Carl Albert absolutely housed McGuinness. 40-0 was the final in that one. I was there for about 3/4 of that game. And the Titans were dominant. McGuinness could not get anything going offensively. Now, you fast forward to the rematch. McGuinness is at full strength. They have Dominic Richardson back into the game, their star running back, who's been an absolute beast since he burst onto the scene as a sophomore. And so the first storyline is very simple. How much will Dominic Richardson change this game, change this matchup? How much of an impact does he truly have on this matchup? Because that's the difference. That's the differing factor. Carl Albert was dominant back in Week 10. How much can Richardson change the concept of this matchup? Look, McGuinness obviously looks completely different offensively with what they do when Richardson is back there. Carl Albert, however, does have one of the best defenses in the state regardless of class. You look at them from top to bottom, they don't have a whole lot of weaknesses on that defensive side of the ball. So how much difference can Richardson bring to the table as they get another crack at the Carl Albert Titans? Another storyline to follow, we mentioned how well Carl Albert has been able to play defensively. And so if you're Bishop McGuinness, you need to get a big play. You need to be able to get some big plays here and there because you're not going to be able to string together drive after drive after drive and be able to put up points. And you know that Carl Albert's going to be able to score. They put up 40 back in Week 10. You know they're going to be able to score some points on Saturday afternoon. So if you're McGuinness, you need to be able to break off some big plays. And that includes Dominic Richardson, whether it's in the kick return game, whether it's him at running back, wildcat quarterback, or wide receiver, whatever you need to do to get creative. If you're McGuinness, you need to be able to break off some big plays, get some big touchdowns to get some momentum, get that snowball effect rolling if you're the Irish, and try to lean on that going into the rest of the game. And then finally, a big one for me is the turnover battle with how good Carl Albert's defense is. And both offenses are about even, in my opinion. Both offenses, they can put up points. I have no issue with either team in their ability to put up points on the scoreboard. Carl Albert, they can throw the ball a little bit. They have a two-headed monster there at running back. Bishop McGuinness has arguably the best player on the football field in general with Dominic Richardson, so you know that they're able to run the football. And so a big key when you have these two offenses and they're pretty evenly matched is going to be the turnover battle. The team that's able to get the extra possession here, extra possession there, is going to have an advantage going into this title game. If McGuinness, only has the ball 5 times and Carl Albert has, 7 or 8 shots at the end zone, the Titans just mathematically are going to have a better chance at winning the championship. If McGuinness is able to win the turnover battle, they'll have that same opportunity on Saturday afternoon in Edmond. All right, enough talk for now. We're going to have more preview coming up in a little bit with players to watch, some X factors for each team, and then we'll wrap up the 5A championship preview by making a pick on who's going to win, what the score might look like. So we'll make our final prediction at the end of this preview. But up first, we need to hear from both head coaches in the matchup, and we're going to start at Carl Albert High School with their head coach, Mike Corley. And then immediately after that, we're going to jump to Bishop McGuinness with their head coach, Bryan Pierce. But up first, the 3-time champion Carl Albert Titans and their head coach, Mike Corley, here on this Class 5A state championship preview on OKPreps. And we start our coaches' conversations here in the 5A state championship preview here at Carl Albert High School. I'm sitting down with Carl Albert head coach Mike Corley. Coach, obviously you're used to being in this position. Your players are used to being in this position. At the beginning of the year, with all the guys that you had returning off of last year's team, how did you manage this team's expectations, their, week to week, looking ahead, things like that? Because back in August, everybody was saying, that 5A, at least this year, it seems like was Carl Albert's to lose. How did you manage those expectations?
Well, like you said, we had a lot of guys coming back, experienced group coming back, especially on defense, but had key guys coming back on the offense. And, Carl Albert, with our history, our past, had done something like this, winning 5 in a row with Coach Rose. And I visited with him a little bit, and we talked, and just the challenge of hey, you got a chance to do something really special here, but it's going to take a lot of hard work. Can't look past people, can't look ahead. You just got to grind it out day to day, and this group has done a good job with that. There's been days like on any team, any program that are tougher than others, but I think the maturity of this group, they realized, the chance that they have, the opportunity they have to do something that is very unique, very special, and they've been pretty focused on that.
I talked with a lot of your guys back in August, and we mentioned, the championships that you guys have won coming into this year, 3 in a row, all the games that you have won, coming in with a lengthy winning streak coming into 2019, and it was very interesting to hear all of their responses to the accolades. Every single one of them, I talked to about 5 back in August, and every single one of them, it was, we're just taking it one game at a time. We're only worried about the next game, and that's all we're worried. That stuff takes care of itself. What about this program has gotten to the point where each and every single kid, it doesn't matter who you're talking to, the answer is always the same. We're taking it one game at a time. We're focused on the opponent that we have this week. I mean, that's the mark of a really good program, obviously.
I think so. Again, one thing that I've really tried to preach to them and get across to them is, we got guys being recruited to go to the next level, but that doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you care about the Titans and what's across that jersey, and they've done a good job with that, keeping that all in perspective, and just preparing week to week, day to day, doing the things they had to do in the off season to make it a successful season.
Defensively, you mentioned some of the guys you had coming back. I mean, all 3 levels of your defense had star power. I mean, it starts up front with Alphonse Joseph. Fantastic junior year for him last year. and he's only continued his progression this season. Reese Collier has had an outstanding year. Rico Wyndham, a solid corner, one of the best in the state. Defensively, you've been around a lot of Carl Albert teams. How does this defense, rank, as far as some of the defenses we've seen in the past?
It's a special group. Again, just the experience, and you mentioned several of them, but David Peters at linebacker, Javion Traylor, Mosley at free safety. They're an experienced group. I'd put them up there with that 08 group we had, Daquan Lowe and that bunch. Smith was on that group, but they've been a very special group for sure.
Offensively, you have to replace Taylor, Rabbit at running back, but you go from having one Division I athlete to another in the backfield with Javion Hunt. How much has Ben Harris at quarterback returning as a third-year starter at QB? How much has that helped the offense this season with some new faces? Javion obviously saw plenty of time last year as a sophomore, but how much has Ben and his experience the last couple of years helped the offense grow as they matured?
Well, there's no doubt you have to have the trigger man, and Ben's been a good one. He's calm, he's poised, he's a good athlete. He knows the game, works hard. He's not one of those guys that is in one of those prime positions and he doesn't put the time and the effort in. I mean, we go to the weight room and he's in there challenging the guys and he's working and they all see that. He works hard out there running and all the conditionings that we do. So, having been there, now his third year, there's no doubt that's a good thing, with his experience. Javion, he's been good back, this year. Rushed for over 1,000 yards, was 25 touchdowns, and then, Contrail Bazell has really stepped up, sophomore. He just went over 1,000 yards last game. So 2,000-yard rushers in the backfields, that's a good deal.
We have to talk about the winning streak. It comes to an end in early October. You guys get stunned by Piedmont. That was back in October. You've had plenty of time to process it. I have an interesting question. It might be a very stupid question. So if it's a stupid question to you have all, feel free to rip me. But was there any part of you at all as a coach that was not necessarily happy, but glad to see we don't have to worry about the streak. We don't have to worry about that going the rest of the way?
It really was interesting because I know people don't think this, but this team and our coaching staff and myself, we didn't really focus and we didn't think about that. That was not a big deal to us. It was just trying to get ready for the next game, and this group just loves winning. And so that was never the focus of anything. Their focus is to try and win a fourth, state championship, and that's been the big picture goal. The winning streak was something fun to talk about or whatever, but that was never something that this group, to me, that I saw, really focused on.
What was the bounce back like after that? Because I made the argument immediately when, that Friday night, after, an hour or so after the game, I said this might make Carl Albert more dangerous because now you have a more irritated Titan football team. What was the bounce back like after that the following week at practice, coming off of something that you guys haven't experienced in several years?
Yeah. It kind of refocused them. I didn't think we had a bad week of practice that week, but we just didn't play well over there that night. Had way too many penalties, and the following week I felt a different edge about them. I think they were refocused, if you want to say that, but not that we weren't the week of practice. I thought we had a decent week of practice, and we just didn't go over and play good that night. So I would say it kind of woke them up a little bit, and just said, hey, we sure like winning more than we like this losing deal,
right.
So they got back on it and have had a pretty good little run here.
Yeah, you close out the regular season at home with the district championship on the line against McGuinness. You come out and you beat them 40-0. Obviously, they're going to look a little different on Saturday than they did back in Week 10. Most notably, number 2 for the Irish. He's going to be playing instead of standing on the sideline in street clothes. Going back to that Week 10 game, beating them the way that you guys were able to do on a senior night with so many, guys that, especially on the defensive side of the ball, who have been, so important to this program the last several years. How big and how much, pleasure was there in beating McGuinness Week 10, 40-0 at home? That had to be pretty fun in the locker room afterwards.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good win for us. Senior night, district championship, all that was a big deal. But again, everybody knows that Dominique's a great player, and he didn't play that night, and that's definitely a difference maker. So it'll be a good challenge, no doubt. McGuinness is a good football team, and with him, they're really, really good. So we got to have a great week of practice, and we got to get ready for a tough football game because it's going to be a good one.
The one team that got you this year, you saw in the semifinals. I know that the coach speak is, it doesn't matter who we play, we're going to take one game. But at the same time, how excited were your players to get another crack at the team that got them in October?
I think they were excited about it. Like you said, I mean, it doesn't matter. You're going to play whoever's on your schedule there. But I just look back to the past, and I brought up some past history. Bixby, I believe it was 07, they got us in a game over there, and we come back and had them in a day game over here in 08, and that group was really excited to play them. We played McGuinness. They beat us during the regular season. We go back in a semifinal game at Norman, had to play them. So I think that's always something that's in the mind of the kid. So they were excited about it.
They come out, they make a statement. You guys handle your business, big time win to advance to the title game, and you see McGuinness for the third time in the last 4 years. Obviously, it's your fourth straight trip to the title game, third time you're seeing the Irish. Is there any secrets at this point between you guys as programs? Do you see each other in the district play every single year? Like I mentioned, third time in the last 4 years you're playing in the title game. Are there any more secrets between the Irish and the Titans at this point?
No, I don't think there's any secrets. Again, you listen to Coach Jones and some of those guys and coaches all around. It's about blocking and tackling, and that's what it's going to come down to Saturday afternoon. And being physical. And the team that lines up and blocks and goes and tackles doesn't turn the ball over. Coach Eckert over there at Northeastern used to always yell out, players got to make plays, and that's the truth this time of year, anytime. But your players got to step up and make plays when it's time. So we've been fortunate. We've had a lot of good players, and they like playing. They'll be excited to play Saturday.
How does your defense prepare for what they're going to see with Dominic back? He ran wild against Bishop Kelly ever since the playoffs have began. He's been running wild. How does your defense prepare, to face an offense in McGuinness that looks completely different when he's in there compared to what you saw just a month ago?
Yeah, it's about staying in your gaps. You can't get out of your gaps with him. He's got good vision. He sees it, and then you got to gang tackle. I mean, he's a beast back there, 200+ pounds and fast. So one guy is not going to get the job done. But we've been pretty efficient. We've been pretty good at hustling to the ball and ganging up, and that's what you got to do against a good back like him. You got to have more than one guy getting to the football, and we've done that. You got to swarm it around. So that'll be the key, is that we take care of our gap and then we pursue and get around the football.
Like I said, fourth consecutive state championship. You're going for your fourth gold ball in a row. Your third in a row as the head coach here with the Titans. What's different about this year's group compared to some of the other ones that you've brought to state?
Well, again, kind of repeating myself, but the experience level in this group, we had experienced groups in the other groups, had some outstanding players. We've got really some outstanding players, but this group as a whole, it just seems like the experience of them playing together for now the fourth year, and only losing one game, 2 games throughout their career, these seniors. Yeah. Just the experience factor.
Now, finally, it's our last question. Other than containing number 2, which obviously is the biggest key, arguably, coming into this matchup, what's going to be the biggest edge for Carl Albert? What can give you guys the biggest edge to bringing home another gold ball, number 15, if I'm not mistaken?
That's
in
right.
School history.
That's right. Well, again, got to play great defense, but our offense has been playing pretty well. As we go down the stretch here, so they're going to need to go over and have a good day. They played well against them last time, and we're going to have to do that again. Our offense is really going to have to show up and get after it.
Coach, congratulations on making it here.
All right,
yet again.
appreciate it.
And good luck Saturday afternoon, all right?
Thanks, appreciate you guys.
He's Coach Corley. I'm Michael, and we're going to throw it over to myself at Bishop McGuinness, where I'm sitting down with their head coach, Bryan Pierce, as we continue our Class 5A preview here on OKPreps. And we continue our 5A championship preview here at Bishop McGuinness with their head coach, Bryan Pierce. Coach, first off, congratulations on making it to the championship game. You're going to see a familiar foe on Saturday afternoon in Edmond with Carl Albert. First off, let's talk about this season as a whole. With so many guys that are going to end up playing Division I football at the next level coming back, what were the expectations coming into 2019 for Bishop McGuinness?
Well, I think it was that there were extremely high expectations. I think we felt like coming into this season that if we didn't make it to the title game, that it would have been kind of a rough season for us. But we had our guys buy in early on in the season. We kind of talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but ultimately started going week by week. And so we pulled back a little bit early on. We faced Dell City early on, got a loss first game out, and then we kind of regrouped after that one and just took it week by week. And I think that's really kind of what set us up for where we're at right now.
Now, you mentioned you suffered that early season loss, but then you bounced back with a big rivalry win over Bishop Kelly. And then that kind of sets you up for what to expect in the district, which was more competitive than maybe people anticipated coming into the year, with Piedmont jumping up and surprising some teams this year. I mean, how did that early season loss, get your guys ready for what to expect with an absolute grind throughout the year, especially in district play?
Well, I think it just gave us an opportunity to kind of regroup and really kind of rebuild our foundation, kind of get back to basics, so to speak. And I think, at that point in time, there was a real focus with our program. Our seniors, we have some great leadership with our seniors, and we started getting back to just the basics and doing our style of football and playing the way that we're capable. And through the district, it was just trying to get better each week, and that was the emphasis that we put on our season, is just going in week to week, trying to get better week by week, and ultimately progress to the playoffs and then ultimately to this game.
McGuinness makes it to the championship game 2016, 2017. You fall to rival Bishop Kelly in the quarterfinals last year. You mentioned this senior group. Before last year, all they knew were championship games as freshmen and sophomores. How determined were they to not let what happened in 2018 happen again this year?
Well, I think they were very, very driven. This group seniors were freshmen, when we met Carl Albert in the first time in the state championship, and then again the year after that. And so, they have experienced it a couple of times, but ultimately, coming into this season, I think last year was kind of we had the transition from the coaching staff, Coach Jones leaving and me coming in, and I think we may have fallen a little short last year, but these guys, they were very driven this season, and I think there was definitely a difference in the attitude that they brought each week to the season, as far as motivating their teammates and just keeping everybody focused on the goal.
You mentioned the coaching change. This is your second year as head coach, but you're no stranger to McGuinness, longtime assistant, before taking over last season. Has this run to the title felt different to you? I mean, you experienced a couple here recently, but has this year, the run to a championship, felt different for you?
Absolutely. It's different in regard that, you're the one in charge, you're the one, making the decisions and those sorts of things. But, on the same note, it's this program, for once again, as long as I've been here, has had a lot of success. And it's not just about me, but it's about the coaching staff that we have here and the other guys that are involved, to help run this program. And I think we have a great group of coaches that, several of them have been here for several years as well. And, with the support of those guys and just what we've done in the past moving forward, it is different, but on the same note, it feels very similar because of the type of kids that we have. I think there's an expectation, this program has continued for several years to, succeed at a high level. And I think that that's kind of an expectation that we have on a yearly basis.
At the beginning of this, I mentioned some of those players that are going to be playing Division I football in the future. Offensively, Dominic Richardson, who has been a beast ever since he took the varsity field a few years ago on the defensive side of the ball, and a little bit on offense as well. Brendan Walker, who's going to be headed south to Norman to play his college ball. For them in particular, what has been the biggest leap in their development? Because look, they're two of the best players in the state. We knew that coming into this season. What has been the biggest change in them coming into this year, whether it's athletically, as leaders? What has that been for you?
Well, I think let's start with Dominic. I think for him, ultimately, just his growth as an individual. Obviously with the injury that occurred to him and having to bounce back from that. Ultimately, last season, was the first time that he was really able to come out after that injury. And, I think it took him a little while to get going again, ultimately to get back to full strength. But just the drive and determination that he's had. You see a heck of a player, out on the field on a weekly basis, but, there was a lot behind the scenes that he had to do to get himself to that position, through the rehab, through the workouts, and he's one of those guys that, spent hours and hours in the weight room and hard work trying to get himself back into a position to where, he was at full strength and able to be the type of player that he is now. And then on Brendan, I think the maturity of Brendan, he grew up a lot, not only physically, but just mentally, and became a vocal leader in our program, not only in the football program, but in our community, in our school. So I think Brendan has kind of set himself apart in that regard, as far as just demanding excellence from the team and everybody else around him.
Let's go back a couple of weeks to a rainy, ugly, November night in Tulsa. A highly anticipated game between Bishop McGuinness and Edison. Obviously for very specific reasons, most notably the two running backs in that game. Savion Morrison for Edison gets banged up, hurt. You guys have plenty of experience of having to play without your star running back. And Dominic, watching that game, it seems like he took that next. He was doing literally whatever you needed him to do. How big is that versatility that he brings, where no matter where you line him up, he's able to have an impact?
No, I think it's definitely something that we try to use to our advantage because of his versatility. You're able to put him in the wildcat quarterback position or split him out at receiver as well as tailback. So, there's not really a position on the offensive side in the backfield where you can't place him and have an opportunity for him to touch the ball and take it all the way to the end zone every time.
Now, the following week, you're able to get a close win over Edison, and then you get Kelly in the semifinals. A Kelly team that had plenty of expectations coming into the year, but man, as far as snake bit injuries go, they got the brunt of it this season, losing star player after star player. How fired up was your team to get? Anytime McGuinness and Kelly are playing, it's going to be a must-watch game. But at the same time, this was also the team that eliminated you last year. How fired up were the kids to get out there last Friday afternoon?
Well, there was definitely some extra motivation for that very reason. We were able to take care of them in the regular season. The second game, which we play them every year, and it is a huge rivalry for us. We play for the Shillelagh, which is a traveling trophy, so to speak.
Which I
Goes
still
back and
think
forth.
I still think that leans towards McGuinness. It's a McGuinness trophy. It's
Fair enough.
you're the Irish. It's a shillelagh. I've never understood what that does for Kelly. I guess they're taking away, and I don't know. I've always thought that was a little one-sided as far as the trophy goes. But I love the rivalry. Continue.
But every year it's it's bedlam, so to speak. Bishop Kelly and Bishop McGuinness. You never know how that game is going to turn out. One team could be down, one team could be up, and you're always going to have a battle in that game. And so, ultimately, we went into that with that kind of an attitude. We need to go and strike pretty fast and kind of get after Bishop Kelly as quickly as we could, because we knew that they're a very well coached team. They're very good at what they do, and ultimately, when they do have the athletes, obviously their injuries hindered them a little bit this year. But they've been a very formidable opponent in the past, and so we knew we had to come in and play really well in order to advance.
You're able to do that. You get your shot at a rematch with Carl Albert. You saw them in Week 10. Just talked with Coach Corley, and one of the things that we definitely emphasized was this game on Saturday is going to look completely different than what we saw in Week 10, most notably because number 2 for McGuinness is going to be on the field and not on the sideline. We just, similar question about your kids' mindset coming into this game, having just seen them a month ago, knowing how that game turned out, 40-0 at their place. Kind of the exact same question. I already know the answer, but your kids, I got to think, are jacked up, ready to go for Saturday.
No, I think there's definitely an excitement. I think that this group is ready to go and see what they're capable of, and then step on the field with Carl Albert, and once again with number 2 in the backfield, Dominic. It does make a difference. He allows our other players to play with confidence, and ultimately, when you're keying on Dominic, there's some other weapons that we have as well that we can use on the field that I think have more confidence, and you're able to kind of get them open, so to speak, because you're keying on number 2.
This is the third time that McGuinness has made it to the championship, and in the last 4 years, and it's the third time that you're seeing Carl Albert, a team that you're very familiar with, playing them every single year in district play. And this matchup has become, one of the marquee matchups every single year in Class 5A. I know that, forever and ever, McGuinness-Kelly will be the rivalry, but compare this new, somewhat new, rivalry with Carl Albert just based on the success of the two teams, the two programs, because you get one guaranteed game against them every year, but more times than not, the last 4 years, you've seen them twice.
Right. No, I think that's kind of an oddity of how it's worked out. Ultimately, Carl Albert being in the district, and once again knowing you have to play them one time, in district play, and then ultimately, knowing that you're going to face them again. So, it's one of those deals after, 16, 17, ultimately you sit there and it's, the plan is to play Carl Albert twice. And so it's a huge rivalry for us. I mean, I say huge rivalry, it's become more of a rivalry. And I say rivalry, they've beaten us in the last 2 outings in the finals. So, we would like to have an opportunity to get one back.
All right, Coach, so you have another shot at a Carl Albert team that got you pretty good in Week 10. It's going to look completely different on Saturday. What's going to be the biggest key defensively to slowing down what they do on offense? A little two-headed monster back there at running back, a quarterback that just simply doesn't make mistakes and is used to winning. How do you get after them defensively and slow down what they do?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to fundamentals. I think you have to tackle well. I think you have to put yourself in a good situation, and once again line up correctly and execute, our defense the way it's supposed to be executed, and then ultimately, rally to the ball and tackle well. And I think, if you can do that, you can have some success.
On the flip side, as an offense that, look, you can't really look at week 10 and use that as a determining factor of what's going to happen on Saturday because of Richardson, because of what he brings. But at the same time, going at their defense, they're still very good. It doesn't matter if Richardson is playing or not playing. They're still one of the best defenses in the state. They've proven that all year, giving up, I think, 5 points a game. How do you attack them and try to get some big plays against a defense that just simply doesn't have a whole lot of weaknesses?
No, they don't. Just as you said, they're one of the, if not the top defense in the state in our class for sure. And very well coached, very disciplined, very active, very physical. So I think the game plan for us is just to go and play the style of football that we're capable of playing, and ultimately just try to take advantage of situations where ultimately last time they were extremely fast all over the field, and I think we'll have a little more of an equalizer in the speed issue, so that will definitely help. But I think ultimately just kind of mixing it up on them and trying to just run our offense.
When you face a team like Carl Albert, who has had so much success here recently, 40 straight wins before they lose to Piedmont in October, a team that's won 3 straight titles, these kids just believe that they're going to go out and win. How does this program at McGuinness fight that and combat that against a group of kids who just, it's like clockwork when the first quarter, when the kickoff happens, we're going to go out and we're going to win. That's what happens.
Well, I mean, there's a belief system over there, I think, to where they come out in the playoffs, and it doesn't matter. You've heard stories time and time again. It doesn't matter what the regular season record is. Once Carl Albert gets to the playoffs, that they're going to make a run for it, if not finish it every time. So it is something for us to overcome, and I think for us, we just I think at some point you just kind of have to take it head on and just go play our style of football, go play the game, and take it to them and see if we can overcome that history and that tradition that they have over there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one of those things where we see it, from time to time throughout history in Oklahoma high school football. The Giants fall. It doesn't go forever. We see that happen. So what has to happen for this year to be the year that Carl Albert falls short, and it's McGuinness coming back with a gold ball instead of those silver ones you got a couple years ago?
Well, I think it's just consistency. I think in the game, taking care of the football, staying within ourselves, never letting the moment get too high or too low, and just being fundamentally sound in what we do for 4 quarters. I think that's the key to those types of games where they can get pretty emotional, and it can be a roller coaster at times, but ultimately turnovers will hurt you, and obviously playing fundamental football and taking care of the ball and tackling well, I think are keys to winning it.
Well, Coach, congratulations on getting here, and good luck to you and the Irish on Saturday, all right?
All right, thank you very much.
He's Coach Pierce. I'm Michael Knight. We're wrapping it up here at Bishop McGuinness, but coming up next in our 5A championship preview, we're going to talk about some of the players to watch for both teams. We talked about a couple of them already here for the Irish. We're going to have some highlights to show you from their seasons this year and talk about just why they're going to be players to watch coming up on Saturday in the 5A championship game. This is our Class 5A state championship preview here on OKPreps. My thanks to both coaches for sitting down with me as they prepare for this week's state championship game, Class 5A state title game on Saturday afternoon at UCO's Watland Stadium. Kickoff time set for 3:30. Now it's time to give you 2 players to watch for either team as we go into Saturday's championship game. And we start with Carl Albert, and we got to start at the quarterback position, a guy who's been nearly flawless since he took center stage as QB1 for the Titans as a freshman. And he's been as close to perfect as you can possibly get. Coming into this championship game, he is, I believe, doing some quick math here. He's 28 and then 40-1 as a starting quarterback for the Titans going in to Saturday's championship game. He's Ben Harris, junior quarterback for the Titans. This guy has weapons around him, and you can pick a lot of different guys on the Carl Albert offense that are players to watch, whether it's Javion Hunt, the star junior running back who also plays plenty of defense as well. They also have a sophomore running back there, Bazell, who's run for, I believe, north of 1,000 yards, as Coach Corley mentioned in our interview. Rico Wyndham, their star corner, who's committed to TU. He's also seen plenty of time at wide receiver. They have weapons. That's what I'm saying on offense. But the guy who keeps it all in check, the guy who is able to distribute the ball to all of these weapons and not hurt his team, not make a mistake, is their quarterback, Ben Harris. And if he continues that, and look, you have a guy like this who's been in the fire before. He's won 2 championships already. He's won 40 games as QB1, and he's only lost 1. A single game, obviously the loss to Piedmont earlier this year. He's won 40. He's won 40 times that he stepped out on the field. So he's not going to shy away from the spotlight. He's not going to be new to this atmosphere. He's going to be ready come Saturday. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do offensively. With all the weapons that they have, Harris is the guy to distribute the ball to those playmakers, both in the running game as well as in the passing game. On the defensive side of the ball, we mentioned how dominant Carl Albert has been defensively this season. One of the best defensive units in the state, regardless of class, as I mentioned, and leading the charge to slowing down Bishop McGuinness this week, and their running back, Dominic Richardson, is defensive lineman Alphonse Joseph. This guy had a breakout season last year as a junior, and I'm not, as far as statistically goes, I think this year it's down compared to what he did last year, but he is a key piece to this Carl Albert defense and just how dominant they've been this year as a unit. And so when you're talking about Carl Albert's defense going up against Bishop McGuinness and their offense, specifically that running attack with Dominic Richardson, Alphonse Joseph is going to be the first line of defense, pun intended there, as he tries to slow down McGuinness in the running game. And he's coming off one of his best games last week. He was an absolute dominating force in their shutout victory over Piedmont. Piedmont, obviously, they live and die by running the football. And so Joseph is coming off of one of his best performances this season in their semifinal victory over Piedmont. And so if he can carry that momentum into Saturday's game with Bishop McGuinness, it might be a long day for the Irish on the offensive side of the ball. A guy that we've talked about a lot already when we take a look at players to watch for Bishop McGuinness. We talked about him a lot, and we mentioned him just now, trying to break into the open field and get away from a guy like Alphonse Joseph. It's Bishop McGuinness senior running back Dominic Richardson. This guy has been unstoppable since he hit the scene as a sophomore. He was making headlines then, and he's still making headlines. And when he's healthy, when he's at 100%, he's one of the toughest running backs to bring down. Bishop McGuinness has gotten extremely creative with how they use Richardson in their offense, whether it's as a running back, as a wildcat quarterback, as a wide receiver. They've split him out as a wide receiver, as we mentioned with Coach Pierce, and how they've gotten creative using him on offense. And then they also use him in special teams as well. He's been able to return a kick or two to either get a touchdown or set Bishop McGuinness up with fantastic field position. So when you're talking about players to watch when it comes to McGuinness, the conversation has to start with Dominic Richardson. He's the biggest key to whether or not they're going to be raising a goal ball on Saturday, as that offense will go as Dominic Richardson goes. Arguably the most talented player as far as the brightest future might be on the defensive side of the ball, and it might be on McGuinness, as Brendan Walker is another player to watch in this matchup. He's a commit to the University of Oklahoma. When it comes to recruiting, he's one of the top players in the state of Oklahoma's 2019 class, and it's easy to see why. When you see this guy up close and personal, this guy is a man. He's not a kid anymore. He is a man, and he is physically extremely gifted. That first step off the line is extremely quick and extremely fast. He's strong, he's quick, he's fast, all the combinations that you want for a guy that's trying to wreck shop when it comes to Carl Albert offensively, whether it's their running game or trying to get after the quarterback. Brendan Walker has the ability to be the most disruptive player in this game. But at the same time, Carl Albert did a very good job kind of controlling Walker the first time that the two met. So he's certainly going to want to have a better showing on Saturday and help lead his team to a potential state championship. When it comes to the X factors coming into this game, we're going to start with Bishop McGuinness and their X factor, a guy who, doesn't get a lot of pub and hasn't been talked about yet. Who could come up and make a big play that we aren't expecting. I'm going to go to the special teams side of things, and I'm going to go to Bishop McGuinness with their kicker, Zach Schmidt. He's one of the best kickers in the state, and so in a game that's offensively, these two teams are so close together, and McGuinness, anytime that they get into Carl Albert territory, they need to be thinking about scoring. And anytime they get into Carl Albert territory, they're going to be getting closer and closer to field goal territory. And Zach Schmidt is one of the best kickers in Oklahoma, and he has a leg. He has the ability to kick it from 40 plus, 45 yards plus out. And so I think that in a game like this where points are going to be coming at a premium if you're Bishop McGuinness trying to get on the scoreboard against a team that shut you out a month ago in Week 10. McGuinness needs to be able to put up points, and if it's a field goal, so be it. Go get those points while you can. Kicker Zach Schmidt has the ability to do that, not to mention what he's able to do in the other kicking areas, kicking off, punting, field position, all of that. So he could have an impact for the Irish on Saturday. And for Carl Albert, we're going to cheat a little bit here with the X Factor. The X Factor for the Titans is that Carl Albert helmet that they're putting on. They play for the Titans. They play for Carl Albert High School. And so as far as the X Factor goes, there isn't an individual X Factor for the Titans. It's that name across the chest. This is a program that simply knows how to win big games. And we've seen it over the last 2-3 decades as they've been one of the more dominant programs in Oklahoma State history. And when it comes to Saturday's game, they already believe that they're going to win the game as soon as they step on the field. And I said it back in October when they lost to Piedmont. I said you can make the argument as immediately the question became, is 5A more wide open? Is Carl Albert more vulnerable than maybe we thought? I immediately pumped the brakes on that part of the argument. I said they're not more vulnerable. They're still Carl Albert. And you can make the argument that they're more dangerous now that they've lost a game and that streak is over. They don't have to worry about that. They can just go out and play football now. Carl Albert, the resume is there. The tradition is there. This is a team, you see it all the time with the best programs in Oklahoma. Those teams that just go out on the field and simply believe that they are going to win the football game. That's a tough thing to overcome. And so for me, that's the X factor for the Titans going into Saturday's game. All right, we're wrapping it up now with our Class 5A championship preview. It's time to make a pick. We've been talking about it this entire time. We've been kind of leaning that way. If you haven't figured it out, we like the Titans in this one. They're a great football team. This is, they've been number one all season in our rankings, even despite the loss to Piedmont. We kept them at number one in Class 5A. Offensively, they're good. Defensively, they're great. In fact, extremely special. One of the better defensive units that they've had. I think that, coming into this game, they're the better football team. And so I'm interested to see what the Irish can do to change the narrative, to change the outcome of what happened back in Week 10. But it's so difficult to get that out of my memory, having seen it in person. And I know Dominic Richardson is going to make a difference. But at the end of the day, I'm going with Carl Albert with a final score of 28-13. I think that McGuinness is going to be able to get on the scoreboard. I just don't think it's going to be enough at the end of the day. I think Carl Albert's going to be able to score a few touchdowns, and that's going to provide the difference in the ball game, as defensively they're going to do what they need to do to slow down Richardson in this Irish offense attack. All right, my thanks to both head coaches again, Mike Corley of Carl Albert, Bryan Pierce of Bishop McGuinness. Thank you guys so much for your time sitting down with me this week to preview your championship games. Good luck to the players. Good luck to the fans. It's going to be a great football game on a Saturday afternoon. The weather looks good. Again, get there early, get there on time to make sure you get your seat. Hear that they're putting in extra seating at Wantland Stadium, some temporary bleachers they're putting up to add some room, some space, to add some seats onto that capacity so some more people will be able to watch this game in person. But it should be a good one. It's the third time that these two have played each other for a gold ball in the last 4 years, and there's a reason because of that. It's because they're two of the best programs in 5A football. It should be a good one. All right, again, subscribe if you haven't done so already to our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com/OKPreps. Hit subscribe. You'll get all of our championship preview videos as well as our championship highlight videos once they drop on Friday and Saturday. Also, for the podcast fans out there, subscribe if you haven't done so already on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Just search OKPreps and you'll get all of our podcast content. That's championship previews. That's championship recap podcasts as well. So go to iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and hit subscribe once you search OKPreps. One final time, I'm your host, Michael Knight, and this has been the Class 5A State Championship Preview on OKPreps.